something happened in the national market. And that was a fundamental mistake that Akintola made in 61, 62. There are intricate parts of this thing, obviously, but so that's how they made money. So that story essentially tells us how regions make money. So for the East, it could be palm oil, it could be anything. The difference between what the exporters pay you and what you pay the farmers, that's how you make money. For the Western region, it was that and taxes. That was the only way we made money. And later on, of course, we started invest. The government now started using the money. Those men were wise. They used the money, for the revenue. They now invested that revenue in different corporations. So for Yoruba people, it was both the revenue from the cocoa and the taxes, but that revenue, they will now invest it in companies. So for instance, they will build Premier Hotel in Ibadan, Lafia Hotel in Akpata, Ibadan. They will build Lagos Airport Hotel in Ikeja. They will establish industrial estates, right? They will attract foreign organizations to do business so they can pay taxes. They would partner with organizations. They will create Niger Rights. They will create Aska Paints. They will, Western region had Aska Paint, the paint manufacturing company. We had Caxton Press, a press. So, for instance, when we had free education program, the books were published by Western region owned publishing press or publishing house. So it was Western region that was publishing the exercise books that the kids had to use in school. So it makes everything interconnected and symbiotic, right? So different industries, they use the money, borrow money to invest. While all these fantastic things were happening in the Western region, what Zik did was it would take the money. So by the way, the Western region had a bank that was owned by the government. Again, remember that it's a different time, so it's not the same thing as now, where everything is so capitalist and everything. That time was different. They had National Bank. We still exist today, by the way. It's now Wema Bank. So National Bank and Wema Bank were merged to form the new Wema Bank. So money that belonged to the Western Region Marketing Board naturally will go to National Bank, a state-owned bank. For the Eastern region, it was different. Money that belonged to the Eastern region went to Zik's own bank. Okay, be like I say when they talk about what happened last year, but remember that thing, but I've been 2 years ago, recently, somebody talk say he collect money from government, put in bank, say he saved the money for the state. It happened before. The idea of saving state money in a bank where you have your own personal interest, it happened with Zik. And it happened recently too. That's why I said people are just repeating history anyhow. So he now put the money in ACB as though that wasn't bad enough. Zik had companies. Zik now took the money from the ACB to fund those companies, which then went bankrupt. Wàhálà bá dé. Èyí owó wọn rí san. Èyí báńkì wọn ò lówó lọ́wọ́. The bank was bankrupt. The businesses were bankrupt. Zik could not pay the money back. This was in 1955, by the way. £877,000. Guys, if you see that money this year, it's still big money. 2025. So think about it. If today £877,000 means something, think of what it meant in 1955. It was that incident that then led to what I read earlier in the Answered, where Yoita reported Zik. And Zik was still doing, I don't want to go into the details. When they asked, if you watch the video on YouTube on the Azikiwe and £877,000, you get the details. So they were in this quandary in 55 that led to the Foster Sutton Commission of Inquiry. By the way, the answered House of Lords met in 56, and then the Foster Sutton Tribunal held, and it discovered that ACB found that it made of the public deposit in the ACB was to finance Zik's various business ventures. In 1955, the Eastern Region Finance Corporation invested large sums of money in the ACB, money which had come from the Eastern Region Marketing Board. In turn, Zik financed his party, the NCNC. In 1955, the ACB and Zik's businesses were virtually bankrupt. In 1959, the Development Bank took over the ACB. The whole reason Azikiwe had been rescued by them, that's by the North, by the British, in 1953, from the political wilderness of the leader of the opposition in the Western region, was to serve as a counterweight to Awolowo. More importantly, he and his NCNC party were needed as alliance partners for the North against the Action Group, which was what I was explaining earlier. With his enterprises in financial distress, his only source of campaign funds having been effectively sealed off with this investigation, and with the possibility of jail term for fraud hanging over him. From this point on, Azikiwe, and through him the NCNC, were firmly back under the control of the strategists in the colonial office. Funding for the NCNC now came from other sources. Let me play a video of one of the strategists in the colonial office back in 1955. By the way, this happened in 59. Let me play to you what he had to say on this matter as we wrap up today. Please do take a listen. Listen and be blessed.
The British government wanted the North in alliance with either of the southern region, either with the Yorubas or with the Igbos.
But
without which they cannot
they can't do it
rule the country.
The problem was that Awolowo was a highly principled man.
Okay.
You didn't talk to Awolowo about squalid deals and fixing things. Awolowo was not that kind of person. If you read his books, this man was a world statesman. And his young lieutenant, Chief Enaharo, was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. However, they did do a deal with Zik, Dr. Azikiwe,
okay,
from the East. Dr. Azikiwe, there was this big problem in Nigeria. It's the same big problem in America and in Britain. How do you get funds to fight elections? The candidates in Nigeria had no money, but they did have marketing boards, which were a kind of semi-nationalized industry. And they borrowed money from the marketing boards. But there was a suspicion that Dr. Azikiwe, who has formed his own bank, the African Continental Bank, was actually bankrupt. But he was borrowing very large sums of money from the marketing boards and not necessarily repaying the loans. We knew this. We had a great secret service. All the politicians' phones were tapped. All the politicians' mail was opened. Everything that any major politician did in Nigeria, we knew in hours. We watched. We knew all that was going on.
Are you saying, in essence, that Dr. Azikiwe
British to do our bidding? We told Dr. Azikiwe that he could go to prison if an inquiry was carried out into his bank and his financial circumstances. However, if Dr. Azikiwe was cooperative in helping forward the plans that we had made in the best interests of Nigeria, Dr. Azikiwe has nothing in common with the northern politicians. He went north and did as he was told, and what he was promised was this: the real power, effective power, would be in the hands of the northern emirs. However, it would look great if the president was Dr. Azikiwe, and he was given a field marshal's uniform and an admiral's uniform. He asked, please, could he have a row of medals? But they said, well, no, that was a bit difficult, you know, to get the medals. So when the ambassadors started arriving, he was known to be asking people from foreign countries, you know, perhaps they had a medal for his uniform. We thought this was terrible, but it was said that this happened. He was very vain. And for a time, he functioned as first the Governor General, and then when Nigeria became a republic, as the president. But he had no power. And when he did try to tell the army, he said, I'm the field marshal, the army has got to do with this. They said, hey, you're just a ceremonial figure. You have no power.
That last bit he said is something we're probably going to explore when they said it was ceremonial power. It was what Freddie Possart was writing about in the book Emeka, which led to the first coup in Nigeria that was planned but not executed in 1964. And it was planned by Ojukwu. Anyway, somebody said, who is the person? The person is the person whose voice you just listened to. That was Harold Smith. It was a that was nice. I hope you had a great time. Any questions? So let's go through the stream was interrupted a couple of times, but we're back now, and thank you very much for being back as well. All right, so some questions here or comments I'll just read on TikTok. If you have anything you'd like me to read, please write on YouTube as well. I would be glad to read out your comments. All right, where were we? So let's start with TikTok. Someone says that's about 25 million pounds today. Well, what's that of money they're talking about? So I hope, by the way, I hope we answered the very first question that made me play the video. Why did he choose to be a junior partner? Why did he choose to work with the North and be the Governor General, even though that would be, he wouldn't have any powers? But why would he do that? Well, he did that. If you listen, I mean, we all listen to Harold Smith, and also the reading of the portions of this book, A Fatherless People by Dele Ogun. Apparently, Zeke had to take a deal, and the deal was you either go to prison or you work with these guys. And there was a plan that the East was going to work with the West, 1959, and they were, you know, our representatives, action group representatives were there to meet Zig before they discovered that the man had declared for the North. Something similar happened in 1979 as well. Each time the West had reached out, there's always this, for one of the better words, is betrayal. All right, and I'll say that because the truth of the matter is, when people say you are a traitor, most times in Nigerian politics, the person who is shouting everybody betrayed me is actually the one betraying everyone else. And that's the truth about the political relationship between the West and the East. So yeah, Zeke eventually took up that job, worked with the North, and then shortly after then began to want a change in the structure. So I read something the other day. It was a meeting Zeke had in University of Nsukka in 1961 when he was canvassing for an executive presidency. Like Nigeria should have executive president, and he would like to be the very first one, because after 2 years, or after about a year, he discovered that there wasn't much to do as the Governor General of Nigeria, so he really wanted power. And that of course led to the coup that was organized in 1964 by Ojukwu. I said it before that the coup that we have in our history, the very first coup of 1966, that was the first coup that was executed, not the first coup that was planned. A coup was planned in 64 when Ojukwu tried to get to and Yakubu Gowon to work with him. But Yakubu Gowon and David Ejo reported that matter to their boss at the time, General Foster, and it was the one who was able to rein them in, right? But the reason for that coup itself was because they were trying to ensure that Azikiwe got some form of power, and you find what I just said right now in Reminiscences by David Ejo. You also see it, you also see part of it when Ojukwu began to question what would happen if there were conflict orders from the Prime Minister and the President, who should they follow? That you will find in the book by Frederick Forsyth titled Emeka. So the point is that Azikiwe did not take that job because he was strategic. He took that job because he had no other option. If he didn't go that route, he probably would have gone to prison. All right, and I hope we answered that question. All right, a few more things before we go. So Remo versus Remo. Okay, I think when you're talking about Aulo and Obakinsanya. Someone says, thank God that Zik was booted out of Yoruba land. Yoruba would have been bullied for life. Absolutely. And someone says, Igbo evidence is opinions. Yeah. Well, that's about it. There are many other things here, but I think we already passed those, okay? So if I start reading now, there will be no correlation. All right, the only mystery I don't understand. Okay, that's the one we responded to. And someone asks, is that the reason why many were assassinated and it was exempted and others were not? Not really. So the coup. When you say is that the reason, I don't even know what you are referring to. So that's the issue now. So when you say is that the reason, is what's the reason? What's the that? But one thing you may not be able to wish away was Zik's foreknowledge of the coup of January 1966. And also what you notice with public figures from the eastern region around that time and their actions between the 14th and the 17th of January 1966. Between the 15th, I should say, the 15th and the 17th of January 1966, especially between 15th and 16th. And then what some of them did on the 17th tells you that there was a grand plan, and Azikiwe must have been in on it. As a matter of fact, he was in on it because of the things that he did around that time, but that's a whole other topic on its own. Yeah. Why did they say Jebu? Was there an agenda? Chams, are you still here? If Chams is still here, I'll probably answer that question. Somebody says, why do the Igbos always cry foul then? Because it works. That's why. Because it works, and because we don't know what has happened in the past. We are ignorant. Those are the two reasons they do it. Number one, when they cry and they shout marginalization, all those things, it works. Therefore they keep doing it. Number two, we for the most part are quite ignorant of these things. Therefore it's easy for them to repeat